7 men. A combined net worth north of $500 million. Over 40 billion YouTube views, a fan base spanning every continent on Earth. And yet, when BTS members sit down and talk about the person they'd want to spend their life with, not a single one of them leads with wealth, fame, or looks. So what exactly are they looking for? Over the years, through interviews with outlets like Billboard, Weverse Magazine, fan meetings, V-Live broadcasts, and official content like the BTS FESTA series, each member has, at different points, described what matters most to them in a partner. Some answers date back to their early career. Some are more recent. People grow, priorities shift, and none of this is set in stone. But when you line up everything they've actually said on record, a pattern starts to form, and it's not what most people expect. This isn't gossip, this isn't fan fiction. Every point on this list traces back to something a member said publicly in his own words. Here are 7 criteria BTS members have described for their ideal partner, ranked from common to the one that caught ARMYs completely off guard. Number 7. Humble and down-to-earth, J-Hope. Jung Hoseok, known to the world as J-Hope, grew up in Gwangju, South Korea's 6th largest city, roughly 270 kilometers south of Seoul. It's a place with deep cultural roots, but far from the glittering entertainment district of Gangnam. His father worked as a literature teacher, and his family lived modestly. Hoseok wasn't born into the K-pop machine. He danced his way toward it, literally. Before he ever set foot in a big-hit entertainment practice room, he was already making a name for himself as a street dancer in Gwangju's underground scene, winning local competitions and building a reputation in a community where skill mattered more than connections. He joined Big Hit as a trainee in 2010, at 16 years old. The company at that time was small, nothing like the Hybe corporation it would eventually become. There were no guarantees. Trainees slept in cramped quarters, shared meals on a tight budget, and trained for hours every day, with no promise of debut. Hoseok has spoken openly about those years. In a 2018 FESTA dinner video, an annual tradition where BTS members sit together and talk candidly, he admitted he nearly left the company before debut because of the pressure and uncertainty. The other members convinced him to stay. That decision, obviously, changed everything. But those lean years shaped how Hoseok sees the world and what he values in the people around him. In multiple interviews and fan interactions over the years, he's returned to a consistent theme when describing his ideal partner. Someone grounded, sincere, and unpretentious. During an early career fan sign event, back when BTS was still performing in small venues and promoting on lesser-known music shows, Hoseok was asked to describe his ideal type. His answer was direct. He said he wanted someone who loves him genuinely, someone kind to the people around her, and someone who could cook. That last part often gets a laugh, but the first 2 points are the ones he's repeated most. It wasn't a rehearsed answer designed to charm fans. If you track Hoseok's responses across years, from debut-era variety show appearances to later interviews with outlets like Weverse Magazine, the core hasn't changed. He gravitates towards humility. He's never once mentioned wanting a partner who is famous, wealthy, or connected to the entertainment industry. In a world where celebrity relationships often function as brand alliances, that silence is telling. Part of this likely comes from his own personality. Among the 7 BTS members, J-Hope is often described as the group's mood maker, the one who lifts the energy in the room. But people who are always lifting others up tend to notice, more than most, when someone else is genuine versus when someone is performing. Hoseok has talked about this in more subtle ways. In a 2019 V-Live broadcast, he discussed what makes him comfortable around someone, and he kept circling back to the idea of naturalness, not trying too hard, not putting on airs, just being real. He used the Korean concept of pyeonhada, a word that translates roughly to comfortable or at ease, to describe the feeling he wants in a relationship.
This isn't a trivial preference when you consider the reality of his daily life. In 2019, BTS had already performed at sold-out stadium tours, addressed the United Nations General Assembly, and broken multiple Guinness World Records. J-Hope's solo mixtape, Hope World, released in March 2018, debuted at number 63 on the Billboard 200, making him the highest-charting Korean solo act on that chart at the time. His life was, by any reasonable measure, extraordinary, and yet, when asked what he wanted in a partner, he didn't describe someone who could match that level of public visibility. He described someone who felt like home. Gwangju likely plays a role in that. The city has a specific cultural identity in South Korea. It's associated with the May 18th democratization movement of 1980, a pivotal and painful moment in Korean history where citizens stood against authoritarian military rule. Gwangju residents were killed, and the city's collective memory carries a sense of resilience, solidarity, and unpretentiousness that distinguishes it from Seoul's faster, more status-conscious culture. Hoseok has never drawn a direct line between his hometown's history and his personal values on camera, but the environment you grow up in leaves a mark. People from Gwangju often speak with a distinct Jeolla dialect, a regional accent that can carry a stigma in Seoul's entertainment circles. Hoseok has code-switched between standard Korean and his Gwangju dialect on camera, sometimes for humor, sometimes naturally. He doesn't hide where he comes from.
That groundedness extends to how he handles money and success. When BTS began earning significant income, Hoseok became known among fans for his practical generosity. In 2019, he donated 100 million Korean won, roughly 84,000 USD at the time, to Child Fund Korea, a charity supporting children in need. He made the donation on his birthday, February 18th, and initially did so quietly. It only became public because the organization disclosed it. He later donated again, another 100 million won to the same organization in 2020, and yet another in 2021. Each time, the pattern was the same. No press conference, no social media announcement from his end, no branding exercise, just a direct contribution. This behavior tells you something about what he'd expect from a partner. Someone who donates repeatedly and quietly to children's charities is unlikely to be drawn to flashiness or self-promotion in a relationship. When Hoseok says he wants someone humble and down-to-earth, he's not reciting a script. He's describing a value system he actively lives by. There's another dimension worth noting. Hoseok is deeply close to his family, particularly his older sister, Jung Ji-woo, who runs a fashion and lifestyle brand and has a significant following on social media. In interviews, Hoseok has spoken warmly about his parents and sister, often mentioning how they kept him grounded during BTS's rapid rise. His sister has shared stories about their childhood in Gwangju, ordinary moments, family meals, nothing extravagant. The picture that emerges is of a family that values connection over display. For someone raised in that environment, a partner who is humble isn't just a preference, it's a prerequisite. It's the baseline for compatibility. During his mandatory military service, Hoseok enlisted in April 2023 as the first BTS member to begin active duty service, entering the 36th Infantry Division at Gwangju. He was largely out of the public eye, but before enlisting, in one of his final V-Live sessions with fans, he spoke again about the kind of life he imagined after the noise quieted. He didn't describe anything grand. He talked about wanting ordinary days. Cooking, walking, being with someone who made the mundane feel meaningful. The language he used wasn't poetic or dramatic. It was plain, almost matter-of-fact, and that plainness carried more weight than any rehearsed romantic declaration could ever. What makes this criterion particularly striking is the contrast with the world J-Hope inhabits professionally. This is a man who performs choreography in front of 60,000 people, who wears custom Dior on red carpets, who headlined Lollapalooza in July 2022 as the first South Korean artist to headline a major U.S. music festival's main stage.
The gap between his professional life and his personal values is wide and intentional. He doesn't want a partner who mirrors the spectacle. He wants a partner who is the opposite of it. In Korean culture, the concept of gyumsun, humility, carries significant weight. It's not just about being modest, it's about recognizing that no matter how successful you become, you remain part of a larger community. Hoseok's repeated emphasis on wanting a humble partner aligns with this cultural framework, but it goes beyond it too. He's not just checking a cultural box, he's articulating a personal boundary. The person closest to him needs to be someone who doesn't lose themselves in the machinery of fame. For a man who literally chose the stage name J-Hope because he wanted to be a source of hope for fans, the fact that his most consistent relationship criterion is simply humility says more about his character than any performance ever could. But humility is only one piece of the puzzle, because another member has made it clear that if you can't make him laugh, nothing else really matters.
Number 6 has a great sense of humor. Kim Seokjin has been telling dad jokes on camera for over a decade, and he has never once apologized for it. Not when the other 6 members groan in unison. Not when interviewers pause, unsure whether to laugh or move on. Not when millions of fans around the world watch him deliver a Korean pun with the timing of a man who genuinely believes it's the funniest thing ever said. Because to Jin, it probably is. And that commitment, that completely unshakable confidence in his own sense of humor, is not just a personality trait. It's the lens through which he evaluates almost everything, including what he wants in a partner. Jin was born on December 4, 1992, in Gwacheon, a small city in Gyeonggi Province just south of Seoul. He grew up in what he's described as a typical Korean household. His father worked, his mother managed the home, and he had an older brother, Kim Seok-jung. By most accounts, nothing about his childhood pointed toward a career in entertainment. He didn't train as a dancer from a young age. He didn't grow up performing in local talent shows. His original plan was far more conventional. He wanted to be an actor. He enrolled in Konkuk University's Department of Film and Visual Arts, one of South Korea's respected programs for aspiring actors. The K-pop industry found him by accident. A big-hit entertainment casting manager spotted him on the street near his university, literally on the sidewalk, and recruited him. Jin has told this story multiple times, including during a 2017 FESTA celebration, and each time he recounts it with a mix of genuine disbelief and characteristic humor. He didn't audition seeking fame. Fame walked up to him and handed him a business card. That origin story matters because it frames everything that followed. Jin entered the idol training system later than most of his groupmates and with less technical preparation in singing and dancing. He's been candid about this. In early Bangtan bombs, the short behind-the-scenes clips BTS has uploaded consistently since pre-debut, you can see Jin working harder than anyone to keep up with choreography, sometimes staying behind in the practice room after the others left. He wasn't a natural dancer. He knew it. The members knew it. And rather than letting that gap become a source of insecurity, Jin turned it into comedy. He'd exaggerate his own mistakes, laugh at himself before anyone else could, and deflect pressure with a joke so well-timed that the whole room shifted from tension to laughter. It was a survival mechanism at first. Over time, it became his identity. So when Jin talks about wanting a partner with a great sense of humor, he's not describing a bonus feature. He's describing the operating system. In a 2016 fan sign event, documented by fans who recorded and transcribed the exchange, Jin was asked directly about his ideal type. Among his responses, he mentioned wanting someone who would laugh at his jokes. That sounds simple, almost throwaway, but if you understand how central humor is to the way Jin processes the world, the statement carries real weight.
He wasn't saying he wanted someone who would politely chuckle. He was saying he wanted someone who genuinely found joy in the same things he did, someone whose emotional frequency matched his own. This came up again during a Run BTS episode, the group's long-running variety-style series that has aired over 150 episodes since 2015. In multiple episodes, Jin's humor drives the dynamic. He assigns himself the role of comedian whether or not the format calls for one. He interrupts games with puns. He does physical comedy. He reacts to his own jokes with his signature laugh, a loud, high-pitched, full-body laugh that fans have nicknamed the windshield wiper laugh because of the way his hand moves back and forth in front of his face when he's truly cracking up. That's the laugh he wants someone to share. Jin's humor also has a specific flavor that's worth understanding. In Korean, the type of jokes he tells are called ajae gaegu, literally middle-aged man jokes, the Korean equivalent of dad jokes. These are puns, play words, and deliberately corny one-liners that most young Koreans would consider embarrassing. Korean comedy culture among younger generations tends to favor sharp, fast-paced variety humor, the kind you see on shows like Knowing Bros or Running Man. Jin's style is the opposite. It's slow, deliberate, and unapologetically uncool. He tells a pun, he pauses, he waits for the reaction. When the reaction is a collective groan, he laughs harder than anyone. There's a specific kind of confidence required to commit to that brand of humor in front of millions of people, and Jin has it in abundance.
What does this mean for his ideal partner? It means he's looking for someone who isn't just tolerant of that humor, but actively enjoys it. During a 2019 V Live broadcast, Jin spent a significant portion of the stream telling jokes to the camera and reading fan comments reacting to them in real time. When fans played along, responding with their own puns or dramatic reactions, he lit up. When comments were dismissive or flat, he moved past them without dwelling. The pattern was clear. Engagement with his humor is a form of intimacy for Jin. It's how he connects. A partner who didn't find him funny wouldn't just be missing a preference checkbox. She'd be fundamentally incompatible with how he communicates affection. There's also a deeper layer to Jin's relationship with humor that's easy to overlook. He's the oldest member of BTS, Hyung to all 6 others. In Korean group dynamics, the eldest carries a specific social responsibility. He's expected to be mature, to mediate conflicts, to set the tone. Jin fulfills that role, but he does it through humor rather than authority. Multiple members have said in interviews that Jin uses jokes to ease tension during difficult periods. RM mentioned in a 2018 FESTA conversation that Jin's humor helped the group get through their lowest moments, particularly during the years when BTS was dismissed by the Korean music industry mainstream and struggled for recognition. Suga has echoed similar sentiments. Jin's comedy isn't frivolous, it's functional. It holds people together. A partner who understood that, who recognized that humor for Jin is not just entertainment, but emotional architecture, would be someone who truly knew him. And that's a high bar. It's easy to laugh at a joke. It's harder to understand why someone needs to tell it. Jin's solo career has further underscored this. His first solo single, The Astronaut, released in October 2022, was co-written with Coldplay and performed live at Coldplay's Buenos Aires concert in front of tens of thousands of fans. It was his final public performance before enlisting for mandatory military service on December 13, 2022, making him the first BTS member to begin service. The song itself is sincere and emotional, not comedic at all. But in every interview surrounding its release, Jin couldn't help himself. He cracked jokes about the recording process, about working with Chris Martin, about his own nervousness. Even in a moment of genuine artistic vulnerability, humor was his anchor. He enlisted in the 5th Infantry Division at Yeonchan, one of the frontline units near the Korean demilitarized zone. Military service in South Korea lasts approximately 18 months, and for someone whose public identity is built on laughter, that stretch of regimented silence was significant. Yet, even before enlisting, when asked during his final V Live how he wanted fans to remember him while he was away, his answer was characteristically Jin. He told a joke, then another one. Then he laughed at himself for not being able to be serious for 5 minutes. The woman who ends up with Kim Seokjin won't just need to appreciate his humor. She'll need to understand that his jokes are never just jokes. They're how he says, "I'm here, I'm okay, and I want you to be okay too." That kind of emotional vocabulary requires a partner who speaks the same language, someone who hears a terrible pun and recognizes it for what it really is, a hand reaching out. But while Jin needs someone who can laugh with him through anything, the next member on this list has a far more practical demand, one shaped by years of sacrifice that most people never see.
Number 5. Supportive of their career Suga. There's a room inside HYBE's headquarters in Yongsan, Seoul that Min Yoongi has spent more hours in than most people spend in their own bedrooms. He calls it the Genius Lab, his personal production studio, a workspace he earned after years of writing, composing, and producing music at a pace that borders on compulsive. Before the Genius Lab, there were smaller rooms, cheaper equipment, notebooks filled with lyrics written during bus rides in Daegu. And before all of that, there was a teenager working part-time at a recording studio for almost nothing, just to be close to the craft. When Suga says he needs a partner who supports his career, he's not being casually demanding, he's stating a survival condition. Music isn't something he does, it's something he is, and anyone standing next to him needs to understand that distinction completely. Min Yoongi was born on March 9, 1993 in Daegu, South Korea's fourth largest city, located in the southeastern part of the country. Daegu is culturally conservative, economically practical, and not known for producing K-pop idols. Yoongi's family was working class. He's spoken about financial hardship during his youth without self-pity, but with clarity. He's mentioned in his August D documentary, released in 2023, alongside his third solo album D-Day, that there were periods when money was a genuine concern. His parents didn't initially support his dream of becoming a musician. In Korean society, especially in cities like Daegu, pursuing music as a career is often viewed as reckless, an unstable path compared to conventional employment. Yoongi has described those early arguments with his family not with bitterness, but with understanding. He knew why they were worried. He pursued music anyway. Before Big Hit Entertainment, Yoongi was part of Daegu's underground hip-hop scene, performing under the name Gloss. He wasn't a trainee polished by an entertainment company. He was a self-taught producer and rapper who built his skills from the ground up. He learned to use MIDI software on his own. He studied sampling, beat construction, and arrangement without formal training. When he auditioned for Big Hit in 2010, it wasn't because he dreamed of becoming an idol. He entered a rap competition that Big Hit organized, and the company recruited him based on his skills. The distinction matters. Yoongi didn't seek the idol life. He sought music. The idol structure was the vehicle that happened to be available. The trainee years were brutal for him in ways that went beyond the standard grueling schedule. In 2012, while working a part-time delivery job to support himself, trainees at small companies often weren't financially supported. Yoongi was hit by a car while riding a bicycle. He injured his shoulder severely. He didn't tell the company immediately because he was afraid of being cut from the debut lineup. He continued training through the injury, performing choreography with a shoulder that hadn't properly healed. He revealed this publicly years later in a 2018 solo song called The Last, where he rapped about the incident alongside his struggles with depression, social anxiety, and obsessive-compulsive tendencies. The song wasn't a bid for sympathy, it was documentation. This history is critical context for understanding why Suga's ideal partner criterion is career support. A man who nearly destroyed his body to protect his place in a group, who chose music over family approval, over financial security, over physical health. That man is not going to compromise his career for a relationship. He said as much in different ways across multiple platforms. During a fan sign event in the earlier years of BTS's career, Yoongi was asked about his ideal type.
Among the traits he listed, he mentioned wanting someone who could be comfortable at home, who had her own interests, and who wouldn't need constant attention. The subtext was unmistakable. He spends enormous amounts of time working, and his partner would need to be genuinely okay with that.
He elaborated on this more openly during the 2020 Weverse Magazine interview tied to the release of D2, his second mixtape under the August D alias. In the interview, Yoongi spoke about his creative process, how he sometimes works through the night, how ideas come at irregular hours, how production isn't a 9-to-5 endeavor. He described his studio as the place where he feels most like himself. For someone whose identity is that deeply fused with their work environment, a partner who resented the hours or felt neglected by the schedule wouldn't just cause friction, she'd be pulling at the foundation of who he is. The scale of Suga's musical output supports this. Beyond BTS's discography, which he has contributed to as a songwriter and producer across virtually every album, Yoongi has built a parallel body of work. His first mixtape, August D, dropped in August 2016 as a free release on SoundCloud and immediately went viral, racking up millions of streams. The lead track addressed his mental health, his pre-debut struggles, and his anger at the industry's treatment of idols. His second mixtape, D2, released in May 2020, debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200, a landmark for a Korean-language mixtape released for free. His third and final installment, D-Day, released in April 2023, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, the highest chart position for a Korean solo artist at the time. He followed it with a world tour, Suga's first solo concert tour, performing in venues across Asia, the United States, and Europe. The D-Day tour grossed significant revenue and drew massive crowds, proving that his audience extended far beyond BTS fandom. He also produces for other artists. His production credits include work with IU, one of South Korea's most successful solo artists, on her 2020 track 8, which topped charts across Asia. He produced Song Request for Lee Sora, a veteran Korean singer, in 2019. He worked with Halsey on Suga's interlude for her album Manic. He co-produced and featured on Max's Blueberry Eyes in 2020. Each of these collaborations required studio time, communication, and creative investment on top of his BTS commitments. The man doesn't stop working because the workday ends. He stops when the song is finished. This workaholism, and Yoongi would probably accept the label without flinching, means that emotional support from a partner isn't just a nice thing to have, it's structural. In a 2021 V-Live broadcast, Yoongi talked about what recharges him. He mentioned sleep, his dog Holly, a brown toy poodle he adopted in 2017, and quiet time at home. He didn't mention needing someone to fill the silence. He mentioned needing someone who could exist in the silence with him without turning it into a problem. That's a specific emotional skill. Not everyone has it, not everyone wants it, but Yoongi knows it's non-negotiable for him. There's also the question of understanding, which goes beyond tolerance. Suga doesn't just want a partner who accepts his schedule, he wants someone who actually comprehends why the work matters. In a 2019 interview segment during Bon Voyage Season 4, BTS's travel reality show, the members discussed their futures. When the conversation turned to relationships, Yoongi was characteristically blunt. He said he couldn't be with someone who viewed his music as just a job. For him, music is emotional expression, therapy, communication, and legacy all compressed into sound. A partner who reduced that to "he's at work again" would be misunderstanding the most fundamental thing about him. His relationship with his family has evolved in a way that mirrors this need. Yoongi has mentioned in later interviews that his parents eventually came to support his career after seeing his success, a reconciliation that clearly meant a great deal to him. That arc, from disapproval to understanding, taught him what support looks like over time. It's not instantaneous agreement, it's the willingness to watch someone do the thing they love, even when you don't fully understand it, and trust that it matters because it matters to them. Min Yoongi enlisted for military service on September 22, 2023, serving as a social service agent due to his shoulder injury, the same one from that 2012 bicycle accident that never fully healed.
Even the terms of his service carry the fingerprint of his career's physical cost. The shoulder that kept him from active duty is the same one he pushed through to perform choreography, to produce tracks, to finish albums. It's a reminder that supporting Suga's career doesn't mean standing on the sidelines and cheering. It means understanding that the work leaves marks and staying anyway. But while Suga needs someone who respects the grind, the next member's requirement cuts even deeper, into the kind of trust that can't be faked and takes years to build.
Number 4. Honest and trustworthy Jimin. Park Jimin has a problem that most people will never face. He's one of the most famous men on the planet, and he can't always tell who's being real with him. That's not paranoia, it's arithmetic. When your face is recognized in virtually every country, when your solo debut hits #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, when fan accounts track your movements through airport arrivals and restaurant sightings, the number of people who approach you with genuine intentions versus those who want proximity to your name becomes genuinely difficult to calculate. For someone like Jimin, who by every available account feels deeply, trusts openly, and attaches to people with an intensity that leaves him exposed, the question of honesty in a partner isn't a preference. It's protection. Jimin was born on October 13, 1995, in Busan, South Korea's second-largest city, a port metropolis on the southeastern coast with a reputation for directness. People from Busan are known across South Korea for their blunt, no-nonsense communication style. The Busan Satyuri dialect is louder, more forceful, and less cushioned by the polite indirectness that characterizes standard Seoul Korean. Jimin grew up in that environment. His father ran a cafe. His family was supportive but not wealthy. What separated Jimin from a typical Busan childhood was his body, specifically, the way it moved. He trained in contemporary dance from a young age and was admitted to Busan High School of Arts, later renamed Busan Arts High School, one of the country's specialized arts institutions, where he studied modern dance. He wasn't training to be a singer. He was training to be a dancer. The K-pop path opened later, when a teacher recommended he audition for Big Hit Entertainment. He transferred to Seoul and became the last member added to the BTS trainee lineup before the group's 2013 debut. That timing is significant. The other 6 members had already been training together, building relationships, forming the internal dynamics that would define the group. Jimin arrived late and had to earn his place, not just technically, but socially. He's spoken about this adjustment period in several interviews, including a candid moment during the 2018 FESTA dinner, where he acknowledged feeling like an outsider initially and working to prove himself. The effort wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Jimin had to figure out who among these new people he could trust, and he had to do it quickly in an environment where competition and insecurity were constant. That experience, entering a room where bonds already existed and having to build trust from scratch, shaped how Jimin evaluates honesty in all his relationships. In fan sign events throughout BTS's career, Jimin has been asked repeatedly about his ideal type. His answers have evolved over the years, but one thread remains constant. He values sincerity above almost everything else. In an early career fan interaction, he described wanting someone kind and someone he could talk to comfortably. In later responses, as his understanding of relationships matured alongside his public visibility, his language sharpened. He began emphasizing the importance of someone being genuine, not performing a version of themselves to impress him, not saying what they thought he wanted to hear, but being honest even when honesty was uncomfortable. This emphasis on honesty connects directly to a vulnerability Jimin has never hidden. He's one of the most emotionally transparent members of BTS. On camera, he cries. Not performatively, genuinely. During concert speeches, he's broken down multiple times thanking fans and expressing how much their support means. During the Break the Silence documentary series, released in 2020, Jimin spoke about periods of intense self-doubt, about questioning whether he was good enough, about struggling with his body image during the group's earlier years. He admitted to skipping meals and pushing his body in ways that weren't healthy. These weren't revelations designed for shock value. They were honest disclosures from a man who believes that hiding the truth from yourself or from others, creates damage. For someone that open, dishonesty from a partner wouldn't just be disappointing. It would be destabilizing. Jimin has described, in various broadcasts and interviews, how deeply affected he is when he discovers that someone hasn't been straightforward with him. He doesn't process betrayal with anger, he processes it with confusion and hurt. During a 2019 V Live, he talked about how much he values friends who tell him the truth directly, even when it's hard to hear. He specifically praised Kim Taehyung, his closest friend within BTS, also born in 1995, for being someone who never sugarcoats things with him. Their friendship, one of the most documented in K-pop history, is built on a foundation of radical honesty. They argue. They disagree openly. And they come back to each other because the honesty is the trust. That friendship model is the blueprint for what Jimin wants romantically. He doesn't want a partner who agrees with everything he says. He wants a partner whose words he never has to second guess. The difference between those two things is enormous, and Jimin seems to understand it with a clarity that exceeds his years. The challenge, of course, is that fame makes honesty structurally harder to verify. Jimin occupies a tier of celebrity where virtually everyone he meets knows who he is before he speaks. His solo debut album, Face, released in March 2023, was a commercial and critical milestone. The lead single, Like Crazy, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Jimin the first Korean solo artist to top that chart. The album itself debuted at #2 on the Billboard 200. His second solo album, Muse, followed in July 2024, with the lead single, Who, performing strongly on global charts. These achievements elevated his individual profile to a level where his identity is inseparable from his fame. Anyone entering a relationship with him enters it already knowing his net worth, his schedule, his public persona. The playing field is never level. And Jimin knows it. He's alluded to this imbalance without stating it explicitly. In a Weverse Magazine interview around the release of Face, Jimin discussed the album's themes: loneliness, identity, the gap between the public self and the private self. The title itself, Face, was a deliberate reference to confronting who he really is beneath the idol image. He talked about wanting to strip away the layers that fame had built around him and figure out what was genuinely his. That project of radical self-honesty naturally extends to what he expects from a partner. If Jimin is doing the work of being honest with himself, he's going to require the same from the person closest to him. Anything less would feel like a step backward. His Busan roots reinforce this. The directness of Busan culture isn't just a stereotype, it's a communicative norm that Jimin carries with him. He's been caught on camera multiple times switching to his Busan dialect when emotional or passionate, and the shift is noticeable. His speech becomes sharper, less filtered, more immediate. That's the register of honesty he grew up with, where people said what they meant and didn't wrap it in 3 layers of social courtesy. A partner who communicated with that same directness would feel familiar to him in a way that goes deeper than romance. She'd feel like home. There's also the matter of trust within the group itself. BTS operates as a unit of 7, and the internal trust required to function at their level is extraordinary. They share finances through collective agreements with HYB. They make career decisions that affect all 7. They've lived together, traveled together, and navigated global fame together for over a decade. Jimin has been a central emotional node in that network, the member who checks on others, who notices when someone is struggling, who reaches out first. He's been called the group's emotional barometer by multiple members. That role requires trust to flow in both directions. Jimin gives it freely, sometimes too freely, by his own admission, and he expects it to be returned intact. He enlisted for mandatory military service on December 12, 2023, alongside Jungkook, entering the 5th Infantry Division. Before enlisting, he participated in a final group photo and shared messages with fans on Weverse that were, characteristically, unguarded and emotional. He didn't put on a brave face. He told fans he would miss them. He said he was nervous. He was honest, because for Jimin, honesty isn't a strategy. It's the only way he knows how to connect. The woman who earns Park Jimin's trust will have earned something he doesn't distribute lightly, despite appearances. He may smile easily, cry openly, and love loudly, but trusting someone with the unfiltered version of himself is a door he opens slowly, and only for people who've proven they won't use what they find inside against him. But if Jimin guards trust like something precious, the next member treats kindness as something even rarer, a quality he's watched change the course of his entire life. Number 3, kind and caring V. Kim Taehyung didn't grow up watching the Seoul skyline from a high-rise apartment. He grew up watching crops grow in Gyeochang, a rural county in South Gyeongsang province, nestled between mountains and farmland, with a population small enough that most people knew each other by name. His family farmed. His grandparents were a daily presence. The world he knew before big hit entertainment was built on soil, seasons, and the kind of quiet, consistent care that rural Korean life demands. People in Gyeochang didn't perform kindness. They practiced it because survival in a farming community depends on neighbors showing up for each other without being asked. That early environment didn't just shape Taehyung's personality. It defined what he looks for in every meaningful relationship, including the most intimate one. Taehyung was born on December 30th, 1995, in Daegu, the same city as Suga, but spent significant portions of his childhood in Gyeochang with his grandparents. His father was a farmer. The family wasn't affluent. Taehyung has spoken about his upbringing in fragments across various interviews and broadcasts, never with resentment, but with a warmth that suggests those early years were formative in ways he still carries. His grandmother, in particular, held enormous emotional significance for him. He's referenced her multiple times on camera, and her presence in his early life appears to have been a primary model for what care looks like: steady, unglamorous, and unconditional. His path into K-pop is one of the most unlikely origin stories in the industry. Taehyung didn't audition for big hit entertainment because he dreamed of becoming an idol. He accompanied a friend to the audition. He was there as moral support, literally standing outside the audition room. A big hit staff member noticed him and asked if he wanted to try. He did. He passed. His friend didn't. The randomness of that moment is almost absurd. A globally famous career launched because a teenager happened to walk into the right building on the right day for someone else's dream. Taehyung has recounted the story in several interviews, and each time, the detail that stands out is that he was there for a friend. His first documented act in the BTS timeline was an act of kindness. When asked about his ideal type across the years, through fan signs, variety shows, and interviews, Taehyung has consistently circled back to one quality above all others: kindness. Not surface-level politeness, but genuine care for other people. In an early fan sign event, he described wanting someone who would take care of him and who was warm-hearted. In later interactions, he refined this further. He mentioned wanting a partner who was kind not just to him, but to everyone around her, to family, to strangers, to people who couldn't offer anything in return. That distinction matters. Plenty of people are kind to someone they're attracted to. Taehyung is looking for someone whose kindness isn't conditional on audience or advantage. This criterion is visible in how Taehyung himself moves through the world. The internet is dense with documented moments of his interactions with people, not choreographed PR opportunities, but genuine, spontaneous encounters captured by fan cameras and behind-the-scenes footage. At fan sign events, he's been recorded spending extra time with fans who appeared nervous, making eye contact, speaking softly, holding their hands to calm them down. He's been filmed interacting with children in the crowd during concerts, crouching to their eye level, waving, making faces until they laughed. During a Run BTS episode, when a staff member accidentally disrupted a shot, Taehyung's immediate reaction was to check that the person was okay, not to express frustration at the interruption. These aren't isolated incidents. They're a pattern, a behavioral signature that reveals what he values by demonstrating what he practices. His friendships tell the same story. Taehyung is a member of what Korean media has dubbed the Wooga Squad, a close friend group consisting of actors Park Seo-joon, Choi Woo-sik, Park Hyung-sik, and musician Peak Boy. The group has been publicly visible since roughly 2019, and what distinguishes it from typical celebrity friendships is its apparent depth. These aren't red carpet alliances or networking relationships. The Wooga squad members have been photographed on private vacations together, have attended each other's military enlistment ceremonies, and have spoken about each other in interviews with an affection that reads as earned rather than performed. Choi Woo-shik, in a 2020 interview, described Taehyung as someone who gives everything in his friendships, someone who shows up, remembers details, and makes people feel valued. That assessment aligns with every other piece of evidence available. His relationship with the BTS members carries the same emotional texture. Taehyung's friendship with Jimin, the two were born months apart in 1995 and became close during their trainee years, is perhaps the most documented interpersonal bond in the group. They've shared rooms, traveled together outside of BTS schedules, and maintained a connection that both have described as brotherly. But Taehyung's care extends across all 6 relationships within the group. During difficult periods, the group's early struggles for recognition, controversies, periods of exhaustion, Taehyung has been captured on camera quietly sitting next to members who seemed low, not necessarily speaking, just being present. In Korean emotional vocabulary, this is called Jung, a concept with no precise English equivalent that encompasses deep affection, attachment, and the kind of care that accumulates through shared experience over time. Taehyung operates with Jung as his default setting. His solo music reflects this emotional architecture. Layover, his debut solo album released in September 2023, was a deliberate departure from the high-energy production typical of K-pop solo debuts. The album was 5 tracks of soft R&B and jazz-influenced pop, quiet, intimate, emotionally exposed. The title itself suggests a pause, a temporary rest between journeys, and the songs explore themes of love, longing, and vulnerability. Lead tracks Slow Dancing and Love Me Again are not performances of grand romantic gestures, they're expressions of wanting to be close to someone, wanting to be known, wanting to give and receive care in its simplest form. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, proving that Taehyung's emotional sincerity resonated commercially as well as artistically. Critics noted the album's restraint, its refusal to oversell emotion, as its defining strength. That restraint is also present in how Taehyung talks about relationships. He doesn't describe elaborate romantic scenarios or list physical attributes. He talks about feeling. In a V-Live broadcast, he once described his idea of a perfect day with a partner, walking together, eating good food, talking about nothing in particular, being comfortable in silence. The ordinariness of that vision, its total absence of spectacle, is the point. Taehyung isn't looking for a relationship that performs well on camera. He's looking for a relationship that feels good in private, in the unremarkable moments that make up 95% of actual life. His connection to animals reinforces the kindness principle. Taehyung has a pet Pomeranian named Yeontan, adopted in 2017, who has become almost as famous as his owner, with fan accounts dedicated solely to the dog. Taehyung's interactions with Yeontan on camera are unself-conscious and tender. He talks to the dog in a soft voice, carries him carefully, and has expressed genuine distress when separated from him for extended periods due to BTS's touring schedule. The way a person treats animals when they think the stakes are low, when there's no social reward for being gentle, tells you something real about their character. Taehyung treats a small dog with the same attentiveness he'd presumably want directed at him. His upbringing in Gyeocheong anchors all of this. Rural Korean communities operate on mutual aid. Neighbors help with harvests. Families share food. Elderly residents are checked on regularly. Kindness in that context isn't a personality trait, it's infrastructure. It's how the community functions. Taehyung absorbed that framework before he had language to describe it, and he carried it into an industry that often rewards the opposite: competitiveness, self-promotion, strategic relationships. The fact that he's maintained his orientation toward care despite a decade of operating inside that machine is significant. It suggests that kindness for him isn't learned behavior that can be unlearned under pressure. It's foundational. He enlisted for military service on December 11, 2023, joining the 2nd Corps headquarters of the Republic of Korea Army. Before enlisting, he posted handwritten letters to fans on Weverse, not typed, handwritten, expressing gratitude and promising to return. The letters were long, detailed, and personal. They weren't obligatory. He wrote them because he wanted the people who cared about him to know that he cared back. That reciprocity, that insistence on returning kindness with kindness, is the core of what Kim Taehyung would need from a life partner. But while V needs someone whose kindness matches his own, the next member has a criterion that surprises people for a different reason, because it asks a partner to do something most people find harder than being kind, standing completely on her own. Number 2, independent and confident, RM. Kim Namjoon spends his free time in art museums. Not for photo ops, not for Instagram content, though his posts from galleries around the world have introduced millions of fans to contemporary art. But because standing in front of a painting by someone who saw the world in their own way and committed that vision to canvas is, for him, one of the most compelling things a person can do. He's visited institutions from the Art Institute of Chicago to the Liam Museum of Art in Seoul, from small galleries in Europe to major exhibitions in Tokyo. He reads the wall text. He stands with pieces for extended periods. He's built a personal art collection. This isn't a casual hobby, it's a philosophical orientation. Namjoon is drawn to people who have a point of view, who've built something from their own vision, who exist as complete individuals rather than reflections of someone else. And when he talks about what he wants in a partner, that's exactly what he describes, someone who doesn't need him to be whole. Namjoon was born on September 12, 1994, in Ilsan, a planned suburban district of Goyang, just northwest of Seoul. Ilsan is clean, orderly, and middle-class, a commuter city built in the 1990s as part of South Korea's rapid urbanization. His upbringing was academically oriented. By multiple accounts, including his own statements in interviews and documentaries, Namjoon was an exceptional student. His score on South Korea's National University Entrance Practice exams reportedly placed him in the top 1% nationally. His IQ has been cited in Korean media as 148, a figure that originated from a test taken during his school years and was later referenced during a 2015 appearance on a Korean variety program. His parents expected an academic trajectory. Medicine. Law. Something with a clear, respectable path. Namjoon chose rap. That decision, rejecting a guaranteed conventional future in favor of an uncertain artistic one, is the earliest evidence of the independence he would later articulate as a core value. He became involved in South Korea's underground hip-hop scene as a teenager, performing under the name Runch Randa, recording tracks, and building a reputation that eventually caught the attention of Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of Big Hit Entertainment. Bang recruited Namjoon as the first member of what would become BTS. Every other member was assembled around him. He was 16 years old, and he was already the foundation. As leader of BTS, Namjoon has carried a specific burden that distinguishes his experience from the other 6 members. He's the group's primary spokesperson in English, a language he taught himself largely by watching the American sitcom Friends with Korean subtitles, then without subtitles, then studying the dialogue patterns until he could hold unscripted conversations with native speakers. His English fluency made him the voice of BTS in Western media, from late-night talk show appearances with Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert to formal addresses at the United Nations. He spoke at the UN General Assembly 3 times in 2018, 2020, and 2021, delivering remarks on youth empowerment, mental health, and the group's partnership with UNICEF's Love Myself campaign. These weren't scripted idle performances. The speeches contained substantive arguments, personal vulnerability, and rhetorical structure that reflected genuine thought. The 2018 speech, in particular, went viral, with Namjoon telling the assembly, "Tell me your story. I want to hear your voice." The sentence was directed at young people worldwide, but it also revealed something about Namjoon himself. He's someone who values individual voice, individual narrative, individual identity. That value system maps directly onto his ideal partner criteria. Across multiple interviews and fan interactions, Namjoon has described being attracted to someone with her own direction, her own goals, her own intellectual life, her own sense of purpose. In an early career profile, he mentioned liking someone with a nice voice who wears jeans and a white t-shirt. That image, simple, unfussy, unself-conscious, became iconic among fans, but the deeper point was about confidence. A person who wears jeans and a white t-shirt without anxiety about whether it's enough is a person who doesn't derive her self-worth from external validation. That's what Namjoon noticed. Not the clothing, the ease. In a later V-Live broadcast, he expanded on this. He talked about admiring people, not just potential partners, but people in general, who had cultivated something of their own. A skill, a perspective, a body of knowledge. He mentioned being drawn to conversations where the other person could teach him something, where the exchange wasn't one-directional. For a man who reads Haruki Murakami, studies philosophy, visits avant-garde art exhibitions, and writes lyrics that reference Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche, intellectual reciprocity isn't a luxury, it's the minimum threshold for sustained interest. A partner who deferred to his opinions without offering her own would bore him. A partner who challenged his thinking would energize him. His solo discography reinforces this. Indigo, his first official solo album released in December 2022, was described by Namjoon himself as a record of his 20s, a document of the thoughts, questions, and growth he experienced across a decade of extraordinary public life. The album featured collaborations with artists across genres, Erykah Badu, Anderson .Paak, Eugene of the Korean rock band Cherry Filter, and others. Each collaboration was chosen because Namjoon respected the artist's independent creative identity. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. Its content was introspective, philosophical, and deliberately uncommercial, an album made not to maximize streams, but to express a complete artistic vision. The lead single, Wildflower, featuring Eugene, was about the desire for inner peace after years of public intensity. The song wasn't about needing someone else to provide that peace. It was about finding it within himself. His second solo album, Right Place, Wrong Person, released in May 2024, pushed further into that territory. The album explored themes of disconnection, self-doubt, and the dissonance between who he is and how the world perceives him. The title itself suggests a man examining whether he fits the roles assigned to him, leader, spokesman, idol, genius, or whether his authentic self exists in the gaps between those labels. For someone doing that level of self-interrogation, a dependent partner would be an anchor in the wrong sense. He needs someone who is doing her own work, building her own identity, asking her own questions, growing at her own pace, alongside him rather than through him. Namjoon's art collecting habit is another window into this. He doesn't collect art as an investment strategy or a status symbol. In a 2022 interview with Vogue Korea, he discussed his collection and his approach to art appreciation. He spoke about being moved by artists who committed fully to their vision regardless of commercial outcome, artists who made work that was true to their internal world even when the external world didn't immediately understand it. That's the quality he admires most, conviction. The willingness to stand by your own perspective, to be your own foundation. It's reasonable to assume he'd want the same quality in a partner. Someone whose identity isn't contingent on his validation. Someone who would be exactly who she is whether she'd met him or not. This also connects to the practical reality of Namjoon's life. As the leader of the most commercially successful Korean musical act in history, a group whose economic impact has been studied by the Hyundai Research Institute, which estimated in 2018 that BTS contributed approximately $3.6 billion annually to the South Korean economy, Namjoon carries responsibilities that most 20-something-year-olds never face. He participates in high-level business discussions with HYB management. He represents the group in contract negotiations and strategic decisions. He mediates internal group dynamics. That workload requires a partner who isn't waiting for him to complete her world, but is actively building her own. Dependency, in Namjoon's framework, isn't romantic, it's a structural problem. He enlisted for mandatory military service on December 11, 2023, alongside V, entering the 2nd Corps headquarters. Before enlisting, he continued posting about art, music, and books on his personal social media, right up until the final days. His last posts before service weren't sentimental goodbyes. They were book recommendations and museum photos. Even in the liminal space before an 18-month absence from public life, he was still feeding his own intellectual world. Still being, fundamentally, himself. The woman who matches Kim Namjoon won't be someone who orbits his life. She'll be someone with her own gravitational field, her own weight, her own pull, her own trajectory. He doesn't want a satellite. He wants a fellow planet. But the final criterion on this list, the one that landed at number 1, caught ARMYs off guard not because it was complicated, but because it was so disarmingly simple that it reframed everything the other 6 members had said before it. Number 1, comfortable being their true self, Jungkook. Jungkook was 15 years old when he left his family in Busan and moved to Seoul alone to become an idol trainee. 15. Most people at that age are negotiating curfews and figuring out high school friendships. Jungkook was learning choreography in a practice room for 12 hours a day, sleeping in a shared dormitory with older trainees, and trying to build an identity in an industry that would spend the next decade telling him exactly who to be, how to dress, how to speak, how to stand on stage, how to interact with fans, how to present himself to a world that was watching every move. He debuted with BTS at age 16 in June 2013 and has spent virtually his entire adolescence and adult life as a public figure. He has never known what it's like to be a normal adult. And when he talks about what he wants most in a partner, he doesn't mention appearance, talent, status, or any measurable quality. He says he wants someone he can be completely comfortable with. Someone who lets him be himself. It's the simplest answer any BTS member has ever given, and it might be the most profound. Jungkook was born on September 1, 1997, in Busan, the same city as Jimin, though the two didn't know each other before Big Hit. His path to the entertainment industry started with a televised audition. In 2011, at 13 years old, he appeared on Superstar K3, a Korean talent competition similar in format to American Idol. He performed and was eliminated in the early rounds. He didn't win. He didn't even get close. But something about his audition caught the attention of multiple entertainment agencies. According to accounts from Big Hit and corroborated by Jungkook himself in interviews, 7 different entertainment companies offered him trainee contracts after his Superstar K3 appearance. He chose Big Hit, at the time, one of the smallest and least established companies among those 7. The reason, as he stated publicly, was RM. He watched RM rehearse and was drawn to something about his presence and leadership. A 13-year-old boy made a career-defining decision based on instinct about another person's authenticity. That instinct has defined his value system ever since. The trainee years were formative in ways that are easy to underestimate. Jungkook was the youngest in the group by a significant margin, 3 years younger than Suga, nearly 5 years younger than Jeon. The other members have spoken about essentially raising him. They taught him practical life skills. They looked after him emotionally. In Burn the Stage, the 2018 YouTube Originals documentary series, several members describe watching Jungkook grow up in front of them, from a shy, quiet teenager who barely spoke in group settings to the performer who would eventually be called the Golden Magne for his ability to excel at virtually everything: singing, dancing, drawing, athletics, video editing. The nickname is affectionate, but it also carries weight. Being good at everything means being expected to be good at everything. The pressure on Jungkook to perform, literally and figuratively, has been constant since before he was old enough to drive. That pressure is the key to understanding why his number 1 criterion is authenticity. When you've spent your formative years inside a system that polishes, refines, and packages every aspect of your public self, the ability to simply exist without performance becomes the rarest luxury imaginable. Jungkook has talked about this in multiple formats. During a 2019 V-Live broadcast, He described his ideal relationship dynamic using language that centered entirely on comfort. The Korean word, "painhada," appeared repeatedly, just as it did when J-Hope discussed his own preferences. But with Jungkook, the emphasis was slightly different. He wasn't just describing someone who was easygoing. He was describing a state of being, a relationship where neither person had to manage their image, filter their words, or calculate their behavior. A space where the performance stops entirely. In fan-sign interactions over the years, Jungkook's ideal-type responses have evolved, but maintained a consistent core. In earlier years, he mentioned preferences like someone older than him, a Nuna, and someone who is good at cooking and caring. As he matured, the external specifics faded and the internal qualities sharpened. He began emphasizing feeling over features. He talked about wanting to be with someone where the atmosphere between them was natural, where conversation didn't feel forced, where silences were comfortable rather than awkward. For someone who spends his professional life in meticulously produced environments, recording studios, concert stages, music video sets, press junkets, the craving for unproduced intimacy makes complete sense. He isn't describing a fantasy. He's describing the opposite of his job. His solo career amplified this theme. Golden, his debut solo album released in November 2023, was a commercial juggernaut. The pre-release single, 7, featuring Latto debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in its first week, making Jungkook the fastest Korean solo artist to reach that position. The album's second major single, Standing Next to You, showcased his vocal and performance range with a retro-funk production style that drew comparisons to Michael Jackson. The album itself debuted at #2 on the Billboard 200. By every commercial metric, Golden was a triumph. But look at the album's lyrical content and a different picture emerges. Songs like Yes or No and Somebody explore the desire for genuine romantic connection, not idealized romance, not dramatic passion, but the quiet question of whether two people can simply fit together naturally. Somebody in particular asks whether there's a person out there who just gets him, not the idol, not the golden magne, not the performer, but the actual human being underneath all of that. That question carries enormous weight when you consider the practical reality of Jungkook's existence. He is, by several metrics, the most individually famous member of BTS. His personal Instagram account gained over 50 million followers within days of its creation. His solo music has broken streaming records on Spotify. And his face is recognized in countries where he's never performed. The scale of his visibility means that every potential relationship begins at a deficit of normalcy. Anyone he meets already has a pre-formed image of who he is based on hundreds of hours of publicly available content. She's seen him perform, seen him in interviews, seen him in behind-the-scenes footage. She thinks she knows him. Jungkook's criterion, wanting someone comfortable being her true self, is simultaneously a request and a test. If she can be authentically herself around him, maybe he can be authentically himself around her. But if she's performing, even unconsciously, even with good intentions, the whole foundation collapses. Because Jungkook has spent enough of his life performing for everyone else. He won't do it at home. There's a moment from In the Soup, BTS's reality series where the members spend time in a rural retreat, away from work, that captures this perfectly. While the other members engaged in various activities, Jungkook often gravitated towards solitary or low-key pursuits, fishing, painting, playing guitar alone on a porch. He wasn't antisocial. He was decompressing. The version of Jungkook that emerged in those unscripted, low-pressure environments was quieter, slower, more contemplative than the explosive performer the public knows. That's the version of himself he wants a partner to know. And more importantly, that's the version he wants a partner to prefer. He enlisted for mandatory military service on December 12, 2023, the same day as Jimin, entering the 5th Infantry Division. Before enlisting, he released a farewell live broadcast that lasted over 2 hours, one of the longest solo V-Live sessions any BTS member has done. He ate dinner on camera. He talked casually. He laughed at his own stories. He didn't deliver a rehearsed goodbye. He just spent time with fans the way he'd spend time with a friend openly, without agenda, without script. It was, in its own way, a demonstration of the exact quality he's looking for in a partner. He showed fans what it looks like when Jungkook is just being Jungkook. And by doing so, he set the standard. Anyone who wants to be with him needs to be capable of the same kind of unguarded, unperformative presence. The woman who ends up with Jungkook won't be the one who tries hardest to impress him. She'll be the one who forgets to try, because she's too busy being herself to remember that she's sitting across from one of the most famous people alive. 7 members. 7 criteria. And not a single one mentioned wealth, beauty, or fame. J-Hope wants someone humble, because he grew up in a world where character mattered more than status. Jeon wants someone who shares his laughter, because humor is how he holds his world together. Suga wants someone who supports his work, because music isn't what he does, it's who he is. Jimin wants someone honest, because trust, for him, is the only foundation that doesn't crack. V wants someone kind, because he was raised in a community where care wasn't optional, it was survival. RM wants someone independent, because he respects people who build their own identity without borrowing someone else's. And Jungkook, the youngest, the one who never got to be a normal adult, just wants someone who lets him stop performing. What's striking isn't any single answer. It's the pattern. These are men who have access to virtually anything the material world can offer. Private jets, sold-out stadiums, millions in income, global recognition. And yet, every single criterion they've named points inward, toward character, emotional maturity, and the ability to be real. None of them described a fantasy. They described a person they could actually live with, not on a red carpet, but in a kitchen at midnight, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, in the ordinary moments that don't make headlines. Maybe that's why armies find these answers both surprising and reassuring. Surprising because the world expects men at this level to want the extraordinary. Reassuring because what BTS actually described is something far more rare and far more difficult, genuine human connection, unfiltered and unperformed. And if there's one thing this list proves, it's that the men behind the biggest music phenomenon of the 21st century aren't looking for someone perfect. They're looking for someone real. Thanks for watching. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we're just getting started.